So Stephen, welcome. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your professional journey?
I am now retired from being a licensed clinical psychologist. 47 years of experience before I retired. Got my master's and PhD in clinical and rehabilitation psychology, and spent a lot of time in the course of my career working with people with chronic physical problems, especially chronic pain. I was director of 4 different chronic pain treatment programs around the United States and developed some model programs for hospital corporation. Went into private practice as quickly as I could because I like to be independent, do it my way instead of the way someone else said I had to.
That's a lot to get done in the first half of your career. You said you prefer working independently. That's kind of like how I prefer doing what I'm doing with the videos. I like doing things my way. Yeah, exactly. So I have a vision, I have a mission. That's kind of what I'm sticking to. Just because I know a lot of people are unclear about the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I think a lot of people, when they go and they seek any sort of counseling or psychotherapy or anything like that, you've got licensed mental health practitioners, you've got social workers, and you've got psychologists and psychiatrists. Kind of differentiate the two between the psychiatrist and the psychologist. The psychiatrist is a medical model, right?
Yeah, it's a medical model, and I prefer to help people learn how to deal with their problems, how to address the core issues that create the problems and strategies that they can resolve the problem, at least attenuate them. I started seeking ways to help people transform themselves and not just they come in, you do short-term treatment, you stabilize them, send them home until they fall apart again. I wasn't content with that, and the insurance model and the medical model weren't content with that. So I had a choice point. Psychologists, psychiatrists, and a lot of people, my mom included, said, well, be an MD. You'll be automatically respected if you have an MD behind your name.
Yeah.
I said, well, I want to be respected because I'm good at what I do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And my dad said, leave him alone. There are good psychiatrists who do good therapy, but a lot of psychiatry are short 15 or 20-minute visits to discuss how you're responding to the medications, side effects, etc., tweaking the medications, trying
Exactly. Psychiatry, they prescribe medications. They do psychotherapy too sometimes, but what I've noticed at least, they either will do one or the other, psychotherapy or just medicine management.
Right.
And sometimes you'll find ones that do both, but usually they'll do the medicine management and then they'll have you go see a counselor.
I felt better about empowering people because one of the problems I see all these years down the road with medications is even if they work, they wouldn't be there if they didn't somewhat work. And even if they didn't have nasty side effects, which often they do, often if not addicting, then dependency forming, still you have the problems sitting inside you. And you're at risk when you come off the medications to have what's called a rebound effect, where you've been kind of insulated from those issues and all of a sudden they're back in your face.
Kind of suppressing them for that long time and then medication's gone and now you're kind of dealing with them.
It feels so much harder to deal with because you haven't had to. And also a lot of patients or clients say, I didn't feel the anger, I didn't feel the depression or the anxiety, but I didn't feel much of anything. And that's a big price to pay, or the fact that a lot of antidepressants.
A lot of side effects. That is a big price. A lot of people don't think about that, how it's supposed to, kind of level you out. But to some degree, you do want those highs. You don't get those highs without some lows. If you just flatline all the time, it's kind of numbing. That's the response that I get from a lot of patients that I see that are on antidepressants, SSRIs, SNRIs, whatever they are, kind of just dulls them. Some people, that's a great thing because if you're, manic, getting these real depressive states or whatever it is, that keeps that at bay. And those are dangerous places to be.
When Prozac first came out, we teasingly called it vitamin P because everybody they read articles about it makes you happy. Oh boy, I get to get some of the happy stuff. And this guy I worked with at the chronic pain clinics, he got on it and he said, I'm going to take it the rest of my life. Can I have some? I'm not depressed, but I want to be happy.
Yeah. It's a good point. And I think the thought has probably crossed a lot of people's minds. I mean, even if they're not in like a, severe state of depression or whatever, just want to be happier. And so could that give that to them?
And that's something they can give themselves if they will. One of the vicissitudes of medications and the medical model is it's disempowering in my effect. If I go to the mats and I look at the issues that are causing me to struggle emotionally and I work on resolving those issues, then I have a success. I've taken care of myself. And if a medication works, everybody thinks it's the medication that's doing it. Most of the research says medications and psychotherapy together are what's most effective. So if you're going to use medications, go ahead. Think of them as much as you can about short term. Stabilize you while you're doing the work, and not that you spend the rest of your life taking it.
Exactly. Yeah, there was an example that I just heard recently. They had done a speech and they had said, well, it was the benzos that kind of got me through it. And the truth of the matter was, it wasn't the benzos that got them to do it. They were able to do it. It's just the benzos allowed them to relax and not worry about other things. And so the benzos helped them get to that, from that, sympathetic to parasympathetic actions. And so really it's just a matter of tapping into that and be able to utilize that without the medication medication, but as you said, stabilize, use the medications to get there, and then eventually work your way off of them so you can do it without.
It's difficult, it's scary. I had former partners from Germany, and she got that dental work, and she said, they wrap you in cotton here in the United States, meaning that when you're in pain, the medical system in the United States falls all over you, relieve your pain, and often when you get a prescription after dental surgery, you don't really need it. Ibuprofen maybe, or something to take down the inflammation, but people automatically take it. She said, in Germany, they wouldn't be so solicitous. Kind of like, okay, so we had surgery. Now rinse your mouth out with salt water solution or whatever.
That's the thing, and people don't realize that potential having that pill can have on them. I mean, I had a close friend of mine that passed away. He had a back injury and was started on some pain medications. Got hooked on those, and then that led to, getting more pain medications illegally, eventually shooting up, and then eventually overdosing and passing away. So treat narcotics pretty loosely, especially in the area that I work in now, post-surgery. A lot of times when someone's coming out from big bowel surgery, or they just had their leg hacksawed or whatever, pain medication's kind of necessary. You know what I mean? Ibuprofen's just not going to cut it.
And then we have the opioid crisis, so they're much more tight about that. I went through surgery a little over a year ago, and I was having 2 types of pretty severe pain because of anesthesia. I couldn't hold down the pain medication they were giving me orally. I suffered for like 8 hours before they finally decided they were going to give me a shot at.
That's a challenge. Definitely, it's a challenge.
So to me, therapy is important to learn how to regulate your emotions and take care of yourself.
So you were a psychologist for how long?
47 years.
47 years in total. How did your practice differ from other psychologists?
I was weird.
You were weird?
Look,
in what way?
We'll start with the fact that I'm 6'9" and I don't fit in. And I took a lot of grief because of that.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I got picked on by people that wanted to prove they were tough by fighting. Yeah. And I'm not a fighter, or snide remarks, or the Jolly Green Giant.
Did that affect your career?
What it taught me, that people want everybody to be like the same, and that I couldn't be the same. That helped me to go, so what other kinds of stupidity are we asked to be, lemmings together going on? When I started doing hypnosis in my practice, I was critiqued for that. I did my doctoral dissertation on hypnosis, so I knew a lot about it. I started saying, how can I help people transform? I don't want to just put a Band-Aid on them, send them away, and have them come back again later. I want to help them really be able to be on their own and maybe come back for a tune-up from time to time. I couldn't find those kinds of experiences or courses in psychology because they were repressing that. I found it in being worked on by healers. I would find out really good healers, bona fide, and by taking workshops from healers and other people. By studying quantum physics, the best way to put that is, reality is the way it is because we say it is, but not really.
Yeah.
So if reality is mutable, or what can you do to change your reality? So I started investigating all those areas, and I had some very unusual experiences. I started to adapt the things I experienced and learned into my practice. Basically, intention's everything, and that's a whole large topic, just a piece of which is what I learned in a lot of the work I did, the things I studied, was you make your intentions very clear from within yourself, and you create from within. So I have the intention that people coming to me from this day forward will be people that are supposed to be here with me. By that time, I had learned how to do what's called manifesting, making things happen. Pretty much, the majority of people came to me, regardless of where they came from, were the right fit.
Are there other modalities so you said hypnosis, traditional psychology at all?
Yeah, I do. I was trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I was also very thoroughly trained in behavioral modification, so I could write a good behavior change plan and help people affect that. Primary thing I do is take a session, you divide it into 2 main parts. One part would be, we sit down and we talk about what has happened since the last session, say a week or 2 weeks. And usually what will be discussed is one variation or another on the themes we've been working on. Are you familiar with the law of attraction? The central tenet of the law of attraction is what you put your focus on, you vibrate with. What you vibrate with, you create more of. So from the standpoint of therapy, even if I'm well-intentioned, if most of the focus of the therapy is on the problem, the latest version of the problem, then you're vibrating with it. They're vibrating with it, I'm vibrating with it. And I use that time, since the conscious mind needs to be fed, to stretch their belief system, tell them stories about myself, about other patients. It's something I studied. A good example is we were in a weekend-long retreat, a series of them. And the whole focus was that when you're in the present moment, then you're not in the past and you're not projecting in the future. You're just there. Things go better when you're present.
That's kind of the overall suggestion, I think, of everyone nowadays. It's kind of just be in the present moment. I mean, I don't think I've heard any sort of therapist or, counselor or anyone really say anything different. I mean,
Eckhart Toll, there's a series of books on the power of now.
Yeah.
And way back when, Gestalt therapy, a guy named Fritz Perls with the big bushy beard said, in the here and now. Back then, we didn't understand as much about that as we do now. We were practicing being in the present moment, and one of the people who was in the retreat had a daughter who was 18 and severely autistic. He would bring her to the house we were in over the weekend, have her in a back room so that he could be with her and then other people could spell him and he could be with us. He'd bring her out during breaks so she could have the energy of the group. He wanted her around that energy. There were about 15 of us and we were in a circle, and he had her sit on the ground in the middle of the circle. He knelt next to her. He put his hand on her shoulder, and he didn't say be quiet, calm down. He focused on us and guiding us deeper into this present moment experience. In 3 minutes, she unwound. She talked slower and slower. She talked more and more coherently. She had more and more eye contact. And then all of a sudden, she looked at us and said, "Thank you," which was almost like her disturbed soul saying, "You gave me some peace." We created that energy and we saw the results. Like, boom.
Did that stick with her, or was that something that was just kind of transient?
They went on and then disposed of more groups. She started changing her diet. They brought in medical marijuana. Last I saw of her, she was doing way better. So that was an example of how that group could shift the energy that had a huge impact on her. Makes you aware that when you work with people, you have to be very careful not to take on stuff from them.
That's what we do as nurses too, and doctors. You're working with people who have issues. Feeling what they feel, can be too much sometimes. So, like you said, setting those boundaries and making sure you're able to differentiate between what you should be doing and what you shouldn't take on.
And a lot of people aren't aware of that. I watched your recent interview, was it Nurse Britt, the ER nurse? Both were talking about communication was key. Basically, you leave your shit at home. Can't come in and you're all pissed off because you had a fight with a girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're not doing your job because someone could die if you don't. Highly trained professionals have to learn how to be present.
Exactly.
Important part is then deal with the emotions later. Don't just pretend like they don't exist.
That's something that I noticed that was very weird when I first started working as a nurse, especially in the ER, was that I did have this social anxiety, kind of general anxiety, but when it came to work, when I was actually in a room with a patient or whatever, everything else went away. I might not have been able to do that if I was out at, dinner with friends or something like that, or dinner with people I didn't know, but for whatever reason, when it was in that professional realm and I knew that I was there, my intent was to help someone and really make sure that they're safe, and all that was gone. That's something that I learned pretty early on how to do, which was really, I think, helpful for me on the outside of work as well. Instilled in me that I was able to do that.
And that's invaluable to learn. Be present, be able to be there for people, and then also be kind to yourself.
Exactly.
If you're struggling.
What type of clients do you typically see? Common depression, anxiety, those types of things, bipolar? What is kind of the array that you cover?
So depression for sure, anxiety for sure, bipolar somewhat, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a lot, because people have been hurt, people have been traumatized, car accidents or whatever else.
One of the common things that I see coming from women is having male therapists in any sort of fashion. Has that been a struggle? If you see female clients, is it harder to work with them? Is it harder to gain trust? What's your experience been with that?
First, the fact that it's pretty much statistically about 1/3 of women are abused sexually by the time they're an adult. And there's also control issues, angry alcoholic fathers. Trust issues with men are big. Given a choice, a female patient may choose a female therapist.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they would come to me and I would ask them, would you have chosen a female therapist if you could have over coming to see me? And yes. The majority said, well, I'm glad I came to see you because I learned how to trust you. I kind of came in the back door because I was director and psychologist for 4 different chronic pain treatment. And the statistics say that if you've had your body be abused, including sexually, somewhere along the way, then you are more likely to develop a chronic pain problem. It's almost like you're attacking your own body.
Really?
So when they would come into one of the treatment programs, which are 4 weeks long, each patient would see me half hour a day, 5 days a week. So they got to know me, and then time to leave the program. If they lived in the area, not infrequent, they'd say, can I continue to work with you in your private practice? And these included women, because in that setting where they had to have me as a therapist, they learned they could trust me. Well, that caused me to start to work with women, even those who had been sexually abused. Initially, would sit on the couch as far away from me as they could sit. And then gradually you could watch them moving a little bit closer to me in terms of where they chose to sit. If I can say so, I'm kind and I'm gentle, and I know when people have been traumatized, you just don't push them.
Absolutely.
You let them kind of come to you. Women, especially who were fearful of working with a male therapist, would experience that with me, then worked out fine in the long run. But some never came, I'm sure, because took a look at me the first time and go, oh my God, you're big.
You're a big dude. That's just intimidating in general for, I'm sure, guys too.
When I was not assertive, when I didn't love myself, I got pushed around a lot. It didn't matter how big I was. What matters is when you start to claim yourself.
Yeah.
Therapy simplifies learning how to love yourself. Most of us have very negative beliefs about ourselves.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think that, people play those time and time again. There's so many positive things that happen in your life, and you tend to focus on the negative ones, and we're just taught to do that. I think it's just kind of a product of the environment that we live in. If you look at the news, it's mostly negative things. If you look at the media, that's what they portray as what's correct and what's right, and how you should look, how you should act. All these things that they kind of put on you makes you think that you're not enough. And then, well, why am I not enough? What's wrong with me? It was hard for me to really break away from that.
For most people, because they're not even aware. I call it subliminal programming given to us by our culture, our country, socioeconomic status, our religion that we are raised in, kind of education we are able to avail ourselves of, all telling us things about who we are. And then we start to live that out. When I'm working with clients to change that, I go, you can show me all the press clippings you want. This photo of what this happened here, and that photo of this happened there, and this is all proof that life is the way I believe it is. Yeah, it has been. But when do you want to change that? Or when do you want to rewrite the story? And you don't rewrite it by constantly focusing on it. I'm talking not just in therapy about it, but telling your sob stories to people. You're vibrating with it. Every time you do that, you're making it more. A big thing I teach them is meditation, which I was skeptical about. Like, I have to sit in the perfect lotus position. And,
Yeah.
I tease about then I need a crowbar to take my legs apart. And then you have to have a mantra that's secret and you can't tell anybody. And it's kind of an arrogance to it. So I was negative, but here I was studying hypnosis in graduate school. And so when I teach people how to do that for themselves, gives them an inner place to go. When we talk about things and I stretch their minds by teaching them things or telling them stories, that's part of it. When I go into roughly the second half of a session, then I will have them go into trance, we'll call it, and I will play in the background some very wonderful high-tech music, we'll call it, but it's layered with technology that's subliminal to help people go to a certain frequency. It's just a wonderful time for so much of that becoming available. When you're in a meditative state, say you come in and you're really upset about something, tell me about what you're upset about, and we talk about and we go into trance, that by the time we're done, it's coming better. Even if it's someone that's fairly new. So how do you feel about that thing that was upsetting you? It doesn't seem the same. It's not as important anymore. Now, what I want you to do is I want to go back into being all upset again. What? You just got me out of here. What do you mean? So they go back and they discover how easy it is to go boop, boop, from one to the other. Okay, now go back to being relaxed, and boom, they're back. We don't realize it's that easy. We think we're victims of it. We think there's nothing you can do about it. When I bring them into that kind of state, I won't ask them what they think about what I've been saying. I'll ask them how it feels to them, because there's a certain vibration of truth. When you look at something from that kind of state, you know it to be true. There's a certain feeling to it.
When you say second half of your sessions, a lot of times it'll be like a state of trance. What does that mean? Because when people hear that word, I think they've kind of already got an idea of what a trance is like, and you kind of think that you're under a spell. Right? That's where my brain goes to when exactly. Like a wizard's got you under some sort of a trance, right? What does that word mean to you as far as state that people get into?
When I did my doctoral dissertation on hypnosis, I had to work with 90 subjects, and I had to recruit people, and I had the misfortune to try to recruit people at University of Portland. Shortly after, a stage hypnotist had been there and put on a show where we had people doing partial strip teases, handing them their wallet, and it's like, no. Of course, clinical hypnosis is different.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what hypnosis is, and they've seen a movie where someone gets hypnotized and rob a bank, brings the money to the guy that hypnotized them. Don't remember a thing.
Okay.
It's not quite that simple. We'll pretend like it is. So most people are really resistant. A lot of people have a very negative impression of what hypnosis is. First off, I want to make it clear. Anything you agree to, if you decide while we're doing it, when you're technically in hypnosis, you decide you don't want to do it, all you have to do is say, I don't want to do it. I've just empowered them. They may have this mindset that, well, when you have me under your spell,
anything's possible.
No. So I make that clear, and then I show them how it's really very subtle. It's not dramatic where you float up out of the chair. It's not really quite so scary as they thought, but it's progressive, step at a time, and you have to deal with that bias they have.
So is it just like a state of being receptive that you're looking to get them into?
Well, let's talk brainwaves. Beta, when you're alert and focused, spiky fast. Delta and omega are sleep. Alpha and theta are generally more in the relaxation end of the spectrum. In general, those types of brainwaves are long, loping, curving, not spiky and fast. That's a calming effect. All the research says it's amazing what the impact of that is. is. One reporter that I read about recently who heard about meditation thought, oh, I'm a kind of a skeptic. I'm going to go get my brain tested, and then I'm going to have it retested after I go through some mindfulness meditation training. So he got tested. Within 2 weeks, there were significant differences being noted. At the end of, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks, he went back and was retested. All these changes that happened. What they basically said is when you're all torqued out inside, then you're creating messes, and all of your resources are going into dealing with those messes, which means you can make more messes. But when you calm yourself, the dentate gyrus usually doesn't grow much. His changed, I think it was like 22%.
What's the dentate gyrus? I've never heard that before.
It's deep inside at the base of your brain. It has many functions in regulation of emotions. So when that grows, it makes you more capable of coping, dealing with emotions. So he was blown away how much quicker his mind was, but how much less energy he was using. They were able to register that. And I remember seeing a talk years ago by a guy named John Heglin, quantum physicist. He showed a brain of someone who is a meditator and someone who never meditated, and it was amazing how many areas of the brain were lighting up and becoming active.
This is on like a PET scan or something like that? Or,
yeah.
I'd like to see pictures of those brains. And to classify yourself as a meditator, is there a certain amount of time meditation should be dedicated to? Half an hour, hour?
Well, I talked earlier about not liking rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So if you only turn to it when you're in trouble, basically 10 minutes even is better than not. Longer is better than shorter. Once a day of one form or another is a very good idea because you're developing a relationship with them. Encourage people to do that.
Because of the demographic that I have, which is a lot of couples that are planning, pregnant women, parents that just have newborns, a lot of childhood development issues. For women that are postpartum, there's a lot of discussion around postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. Are you able to help with things like this? What's your kind of take on this, and how big of an issue do you see it to be?
It's a big issue because, look what happens is huge hormonal changes as a result of giving birth, changes in your body image, changes in your sleep cycles, changes in your relationship, sexual changes with your partner. It's a struggle probably for most women, even though the act of giving birth is mostly beautiful. It can be painful, it can be a struggle, it can be prolonged. I don't know what the percentages are, but there's a fair percentage that end up struggling emotionally afterwards.
So think about all the things you just listed off, your hormonal changes, sleep cycles. It's hard to hear all that and not expect there to be some sort of change in mood and depression. I couldn't imagine not.
We live in a society where we say, how are you? And you're supposed to say, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And if you dare to say, well, actually, I'm kind of depressed. Like, well, I got a meeting I got to get to, and I don't know. And so you have the husband of a woman that just gave birth who is feeling overwhelmed himself with, baby crying, the baby needs to be diapers changed, food, sleep disturbances also. So they aren't always able to be there when a woman is suffering with postpartum depression. They don't even necessarily know what it is, and they may get angry about it even. There's a lot of issues.
Yeah, so not understanding it. The things to look out for with women that might be struggling with postpartum depression, for the men that just don't understand or aren't aware of it, just don't get what's going on with their partners.
No, they don't. When I work with women who are struggling with that, it's useful to bring in partner and educate them some about what they're going through, how it's legitimate, and there are things that they can do. And one of them, a real key one, would be make sure she gets a little bit of time just to herself, where she can meditate or go for a walk or just get out, be just with herself.
And by herself, you mean herself without baby?
Without baby, just a little bit of resourcing is what you would call it. Kind of gather your resources. Lots of times when you're working with one half of a relationship, the other half may say, oh, no, I don't need that. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Gotcha, yeah.
I've had to learn how to help the one partner change and hope that affects change at the other partner. In a lot of ways it does.
From, men that aren't too sure what to kind of look for, what are kind of some of the telltale signs that a woman might be going through postpartum depression?
Sleep disturbances, irritability, crying spells, withdrawal from family and friends, all these things that, not like they used to be.
So just an overall kind of change in behavior.
Behavior and demeanor, yeah. And a lot of times the husband or boyfriend is not paying attention. It's like he's not happy with what he sees. Doesn't understand it. Maybe he gets a little judgmental about it. Pull yourself together.
Exactly, yeah. What would be your recommendation for a partner that's noticing that their new mom is going through postpartum depression? What would you recommend that they do? How do they approach them? Is there things that they could do, without seeking help?
There's always the rub of where do I find the time to go to a therapy session when I'm overwhelmed by being a mom? So to some extent, you almost have to do it with less therapy rather than more. So getting help, yes, but also, dear, you seem to really be struggling. What can I do to help? How about if I'll help you to have an hour or an hour and a half a day to yourself where you can do something that helps you to feel better about yourself? Go to a cafe and sit down and have a cup of coffee where there's no crying baby.
Exactly, yeah. Or not their crying baby, at least.
Really good point. That works wonders because being kind to yourself, and that always pays off.
So you mentioned sometimes it's hard to find time for therapy. I know for a lot of people it's hard to find money for therapy. It could be a lot of money, and it's a lot of people that have these mental health issues are struggling. It might be due to socioeconomic type things, financial struggles or burdens. So for someone who doesn't have the means to be able to afford a traditional psychologist or a mental health practitioner, what resources do they have? What's kind of available out there for them?
Most psychologists are on a sliding fee scale where they're willing to work with someone. And when I do that, it's like, okay, let's talk about how much you need. You need to come in every week. And ideally at first, that's a good idea to get some traction, get going. And what's your budget like? And then try to come to a figure that encourages more rather than less, but doesn't break the bank.
Exactly, Okay.
Because I'm there to help.
So people out there that don't feel like they have the money to be able to do it shouldn't be afraid to at least approach and say, hey, is there something that we can work out?
What I say to someone calling me on the phone or approaching me by email, for example, why don't we get together for a free session, no charge, so you can tell me who you are and what you feel you need. I can tell you how I see it and what I would propose to do. You can see if you're comfortable with me. That's the way it should always be. It's not, just because you walk through the door doesn't mean we got a commitment for 20 years of therapy.
And it's got to be the right fit. And I think that's an issue for a lot of people is that they've tried therapy maybe once or twice, and because for whatever reason it didn't work out, maybe they just didn't jive with the provider for whatever reason, that kind of left a bad taste in their mouth, and then they're not willing to seek it again. It's unfortunate because there's so many different ways that different people practice. For them to have that kind of idea in their head that therapy hasn't worked for me, I mean, to me that's just so generalizing. And I've seen lots of different therapists. I've gotten a lot out of a lot of them. Sometimes it was just one of those things where most recently was like, okay, I'm going to see several of them and then decide which one I want to see, because you don't just go to the first one that you come to and then
that'd
say
be a mistake.
In a sense, it was kind of like I was going to interview them. They were at the same time finding out what my needs were. I was finding out what they were able to provide for me, and if I've really kind of had that vibe with them.
Now I'm doing the same thing on the other side.
Exactly.
Do I feel like I can get through this person? Do I feel like they're open to hearing what I have to say and working on what I ask them to work on, So I'll pull the plug myself sometimes, or I'll give it a try and see how it goes. And then we talk, okay, how can we make this affordable? I think the most important thing is when they sit down with a therapist, and it's going to work or it's not going to work. It may not be obvious with one session, or maybe.
Yeah, because it might work for someone, not work for someone else. I think that's the main thing is just to not give up because you've had a bad experience with one. There's all sorts of different ways to approach whatever problem it is that you're having. So, sometimes it's a personality thing. There's been times where I've clearly had personality conflicts with people that I've sat down with, and it might have been just the state that I was in, or it might have been the state that they were in, but I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And I knew right off the bat. And so that didn't make me say, okay, well, the hell with therapy. Therapy's no good.
You got to remember, in any profession, there's good and there's bad. There's people that are really good at what they do, and there's people that kind of coast along and don't do much. I can't do that. I get paid. That's how I make a living. My real pay is getting results, making a difference.
So 47 years is a long time for helping people. How have you helped yourself? Aside from the recent cancer treatment, how have you stayed spiritually fit yourself throughout helping all these other people in your career?
Okay, number one, I do meditate fairly regularly.
And has that been a constant thing throughout your entire career?
No, it's something I kind of worked my way into because, like I said, I was kind of resistant. There's a funny story where I was being trained by a guy named Stefan who wrote a book called Quantum Psychology, and Trance as People Live is another book. So I did a 15-day workshop with him, and he said, you ever notice you go to some place like PCC and they're vegan or they eat organic and they meditate and they wear their Birkenstocks, kind of jerks. And the point he made was that too often people say, I'm getting upset, I need to go meditate. Well, then they're using meditation like a drug. They're using it to suppress their feelings instead of listening to their feelings. And ultimately the feelings will come out. They seek to be released. In sessions with people, I go into a trance state with them. I let myself be guided through that channeling, if you will. But I also do it for myself because there are times when it's just for me. It's not that I'm benefiting because I'm helping someone. And so that's one. Exercise. I have a lot of things going on lately, so I've been less good about that. Eating properly, because if you want to be high frequency, you got to put high frequency fuel in your body.
You decided to put psychology to the side, or retire from psychology. What other points throughout your career were very pivotal or made huge differences? It made you kind of change direction or go a different way?
I started to work with healers that helped me center myself and do better emotionally and physically. And I started to have them work with my clients that would tolerate that, worked alongside them, learned from them. I went to retreats. My dad died in 2005 of leukemia. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've had, and also the most sad, because we surrounded him with love for a week before he died, and then we did a celebration of life afterwards, and we were honest about it. We cry, we laugh, we play. It changed me. And my sister, 2 years older than me, died almost 2 years ago. She got lymphoma, and she would not stop smoking. She would not stop eating sugar. She would not stop eating carbs. She didn't make it. Family, which are more traditional, realized that she was pro-alternative stuff, saw her as a failure of that approach. And so that was one motivation I borrowed from. It's like, I believe in it.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to do it, I can't screw around. I inadvertently became a pioneer in what you might call energy psychology because of who I am and timing. And all the things that I've been doing that were sort of like not kosher are now pushing their way into not just psychology, but medicine and biology and epigenetics and all those things.
Yeah.
Fascinating time to live in.
And this was stuff that you were doing a long time ago.
Yeah, I've been doing it for ages and being at risk because I wasn't doing it the way it's supposed to. And so now it's being justified by research that's going on and by books being written. A great one's called Mind to Matter by Jonathan Church, who's an epigenetics biologist who talks about how we create reality. Greg Braden, who talks a lot about quantum physics and the implications of quantum physics for the average man.
For someone that wants to get involved with energy healing or wants to learn more about it, books that you've referenced, I'll definitely put links in the description. And there are ones I want to look into myself. Like, how would you recommend someone approach the whole practice of using energy to help heal something that they've never done before, something that they know nothing about? How would you advise someone?
I would say look around and see what kind of workshops or retreats you can attend that will immerse you in that. You know, I've done a lot of workshops and retreats, very, very intensive, many of them in silence for a whole weekend or longer. And I don't expect you to do the same, but you benefit from what I learned from that. I pass that on to you. So when you go and do some workshops or retreats, it's not just what you're learning, it's the energy you enter into. The Bible says when two or more are gathered. So when you have people coming together with this purpose of healing, you got a powerful force there.
You going to these retreats, I'm having these experiences. Have you had what most people would call some sort of spiritual awakening? Was there one that stood out from the rest that was more profound, or was there a series of these, or were there any at all?
I'll say that for a lot of people, the spiritual awakening, when it happens, it's some traumatic event that just puts them in high gear. For most people, it's just plain dedication and determination that you subject yourself to workshops, retreats, courses where you learn. What we found when we would be in a series of retreats was you'd sign up for it, and then the week before a retreat would happen, all of a sudden, all hell would break loose. And you'd be going, what the shit? And all this stuff coming at me and all this stuff going wrong. And then we would remember, when you say, I want to change, and when you sign up for a powerful retreat where two or more are gathered, love brings up everything it's not. Healing is an act of love. All this stuff that needs to be healed shows up. And it's easy to say, well, you're being picked on. No, you're being shown where you need to look. And if you take that attitude, you do much better. So we would have Hell Week the week before a retreat. One time when I was going to Boulder for this retreat, and I got really sick, and I went anyway. And I said, I can't do this. I'm just too sick. We're at 6,000 feet here in Boulder, and I can't breathe. And he goes, well, I guess you got a lot to work on, don't you? My version was I'm going to go back to the hotel and sleep. His version was, no, you're going to stay here, drink lemon water, and go through the process. And it was very, very difficult. But when you put through those kinds of processes, you find depths within yourself that you didn't know were there. Extremely difficult, but highly beneficial. There's a great movie called Resurrection. Is it a true story? Probably. Where she gets paralyzed in a car accident and has to go home to live with her fundamentalist father, and she's a captive audience because she can't walk. And then she discovers when she touches people that strange things happen and they heal. So she starts working on herself, which is all the harder. Yeah. And then she gets where she can walk. Very fascinating movie. Knowing what I know and working with healers, and that's a true story. If it's not that this person actually existed and did these things, there are people like that.
It's true for someone.
Yeah. The accident triggered her into it, and she was forever changed. Greg Braden, who's written a lot of books on quantum physics, like Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor in Olympia, he's written books like You Are the Placebo and Becoming Supernatural, and where they talk about all the stuff that they have experienced and that they teach, the work they do. It's fascinating. So you just educate yourself, you'll have all the experiences you can have to kind of push the limits and pay attention.
And this is all very, I'm sure, foreign to a lot of people that are listening and watching. As far as energy, you talk a little bit about epigenetics, but as far as energy healing, how does that integrate into the Western medical medical model. How do you see that? If it hasn't already, how do you see that in the future happening?
Okay, so let's talk about epigenetics. What they've been proving for a while now, but it's rapidly picking up pace, is that change the environment, you change your DNA. So we all thought, well, it's in my DNA and I'm going to have a heart attack or I'm going to have cancer, or I'm going to be an alcoholic or whatever. Well, you may be genetically loaded for that, but there are things you can do like therapy, dietary stuff you can do, and exercise that can attenuate that and make that bomb less likely to go off. But when you change your environment, what does that mean? Both internal and external. The more at peace you are, the more everything starts to change, including your DNA. That's magical, what they're studying about that.
Yeah, okay. And that's something that's like full bore right now, at least from what I've been hearing from different people. There was a doctor that I know that I think he's down in Arizona, but he's working real heavily on epigenetics and also plant medicine and stuff like that, and integrating all sorts of things together, and just like it's mind, body, and spirit, including all that into the well-being of someone is so important.
Yes, I encourage people to look up a group called ACEP, A-C-E-P. It's the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. 20 years ago, I went to San Diego for one of their very first conferences. They had wonderful courses, and I could get no credit for any of them because they were too weird. I met the husband and wife psychologist team that founded it, had dinner with them, and they told me how she had been terribly afraid of height and that she'd done the emotional freedom technique, the tapping.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And that she had graduated from self-imposed treatment by riding up an elevator on the outside of a building so she could see she was going up and doing that successfully. So fast forward about 4 years ago, I was just bored silly with the kind of continuing education that was available in psychology, like how to do a proper chart so you don't get sued. Checked out ACEP, and they had a course online called The Science of Energy Healing, 18 credits. All of them I got. It's like, what happened?
Towards psychology.
Towards psychologist. Toward my license as a psychologist.
And 20 years ago wasn't even a...
No way, And Dawson Church was one of the presenters in that course. So the following summer, I went to Santa Clara for their annual conference, and I got another 18 credits.
Really? Wow. It's a huge shift.
Huge shift. And I was in the elevator riding up to my room at one point, and this guy was there, and he says, so are you new here? And he was one of the people involved in the organization. And I said, yeah, I was here 18 years ago, and it's amazing what kind of courses you're offering now for credit. Oh, it took a long time and a lot of money and a lot of effort.
Yeah, I imagine, yeah.
It's happening, and it's a misnomer to call it comprehensive energy psychology because people there, biologists, nurses, physicians, all the helping fields, this is invading in a good sense. Everything's rapidly changing.
In a good way. I've just been feeling like there's the whole enlightening that's kind of happening with the population in general.
Yeah, people are hungry for something different, and I went to the reception for getting Alumni of the Year. Congratulations.
Nice.
And when you spoke, you talked about you have a passion to make a difference. So do I. And our society is really hurting. We need help make a difference.
Yeah.
Everybody's struggling. It's pretty brutal out there. And the more people can learn to be kind to themselves and then offer that to other people, and the more they study stuff like this and realize the potential, it's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you get enough people being kind and loving and contemplative, meditative. A lot of research coming out when kids misbehave in school, instead of time out, they put them in meditation classes. And it's amazing the differences, how they change and how they are able to focus in school and they aren't as resistive.
I didn't know that was being put into practice.
Not enough, more and more reports where they're taking innovative approaches like that.
I guess overall, how could you see the healthcare system improving, the system itself improving by incorporating practices that you partake in, that you actually provide services for?
I want to be optimistic and say I'm thrilled that where I was kind of an outlaw, now that I've stepped out, I'm not as much anymore. And so much of this is coming into the mainstream. And so it's an extremely exciting time, and I trust that momentum is there and it's growing. Expanding because people are hungry. So I encourage people to do their own work, their own reading, their own research, their own retreats or workshops or whatever, to expose themselves to that and have that become part of their world, and you pay it forward. So just start the journey in whatever way to kind of move yourself in that direction and become a force that helps everybody else do that instead of negative force.
Gotcha, yeah. How long ago did you retire?
I was more or less forced into retirement on March 8, 2018, because I got a diagnosis of bladder cancer, and my girlfriend said, you need to quit working and focus on healing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I did, and I didn't think I was coming back. I thought, this is it. I'm either not going to make it or I'll make it, but I won't be back. So I went through this rather rather intense journey, came out the other side cancer-free. And I did it my way. I have a blog I wrote as I went through it so people could see what my choice points were and maybe have those help them if they get in that same position. And I thought, I'm going to prove this works. I was very honest and I laid it out.
You mean when you were going through your...
Yeah, every couple of days I wrote a blog that I sent by email. And at the end I wrote a summary of what I did. It was life-changing because what I did was I proved that I practiced what I preach and I proved that it worked. And I was able to be cancer-free. So that was huge. When I was fighting cancer, I knew that cancer feeds on sugar. I knew that cancer feeds on carbohydrates. So I spent 5 weeks or more where I drank water with hydrogen peroxide, and I alkalized my body as much as possible because cancer likes acid, not alkaline. And I cut off the supplies. I ate no carbs at all, no sugar at all. So I was detoxing because of that, so I felt like crap. Then the mental part came in. Well, I feel like crap because I'm killing the cancer, not because it's killing me. Basically, water with hydrogen peroxide and bone broth, period. Nothing solid. And I think that was big. You want to defeat an enemy? Cut off their supply lines. I'll never forget, I was in recovery, but my girlfriend and my family members said the surgeon came out after the second surgery, which he says, I thought I couldn't save his bladder, and now I think I can. Lab reports said that the tumor was highly fragmented and extensively necrotic, falling apart and dying.
Wow.
It's like, yes. And where he thought it would damage the bladder to pull it out because it was so big and tight in there, it was losing its grip on that bladder. So that was an amazing moment. It's like, yes. As I did it, I believed in it, but you never know.
Yeah.
Am I right? And then I'm going to end up dead because I'm stupid. So I studied a lot of this stuff. And what I realized when I ended up with cancer was that everything I'd done was preparing me to be equipped to take care of this in a very powerful way. One of my mottos coming out of it was, well, if you don't like some of what the medical model says you should do, what can you do so you don't have to? How can you empower yourself? What can you do for yourself? So when they told me, well, we want to chemo you and take out your bladder and chemo you again, I don't do chemo, period. I'm not going to talk to you about that. Can I save my bladder? I don't know. I'm going to try. My girlfriend was a physician's assistant in Germany, hospice nurse for 14 years. He says, I can help you with that. I love you. That's okay. If you lose your bladder, I can handle it. And she could. My version was, well, let's see if I don't have to. And then when I'm going into the last surgery and the anesthesiologist is about to put me under and he says, oh yeah, I don't want to piss off the nurses because I got like a long day of this one surgery, like 6.5 hours. And I go, what kind of surgery is that? Bladder removal. Oh, you don't want to do that if you don't have to, he said.
Really?
I don't think he knew what I had been facing.
Yeah. What is the worst food you've ever eaten?
Most unusual food. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is eggplant. Can't stand it. And beets. Can't stand beets.
Those are foods you don't like. They're not that unusual, though.
Most unusual was I went to a Russian restaurant and had, they have borscht, and I love cabbage, Jewish cabbage borscht. Didn't realize that borscht in Russian restaurants is made from beets. And so I started eating them. Oh, this is awful. What's wrong with this stuff?
I just hate beets.
The beets have a very strong taste to me.
What movie do you know the most quotes from?
Spiritual movie called The Celestine Prophecy. It was also a best-selling book. It's about these tablets that are being sought after by the Catholic Church in South America, the government in South America, spiritual people, and it's a beautiful movie about awakening and enlightenment.
Gotcha. It's not that fun, though. I'm sure it's very inspirational.
It was quite inspirational to watch. And
this might be right up your alley. Have you ever encountered a haunted house?
Yeah.
Like a real haunted house?
Yeah, I was with a good friend who's a chiropractor, and we went over to Port Townsend to have a writing weekend, and we stayed in a hotel there that is known to have spirits. And there's this strange smell. He's really sensitive.
Well, your buddy, right?
He's really sensitive to us. He was telling about stuff he saw, experienced.
What's the longest rabbit hole that you've been down? As far as thinking into something, just keep going, can't stop thinking about it. I mean, maybe no end to it.
I used to be quite a conspiracy theorist, maybe too angry and too uptight, even paranoid.
Because you can keep going down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I don't believe that we are kept fat and stupid. We are consumer cattle. I believe that we are fed with crappy food. It doesn't help us vibrate at a higher rate. I believe that chemical medicine is not the best way to go, but it's become the standard. I believe we're being controlled by being sick all the time.
Yeah.
I will always believe that. I just won't do my best not to get stuck in that.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't even seem like a conspiracy theory anymore. It just seems like
reality, yeah.
If you had some sort of display, like Iron Man, he's got all that, digital stuff he sees on his helmet or his screen or whatever. If you had like a display that showed 3 character qualities of any person that you looked at, what would those qualities be?
Sense of humor. Life's short. Nobody gets out of it alive, so why take it so seriously? When you laugh at something, you kind of raise the vibration. You lighten it up. density.
So you'd want to have that one on there.
Okay, integrity, 4 agreements, the book. One of them is be impeccable about your word.
Yes.
That's crucial because we don't have enough of that anymore. The third would be kindness, because that's just a powerful, powerful force. People soak it up. They don't get enough of it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent 3. What trend, out of all the trends that are out there, what trend are you most tired of? And it could be any sort of trend, a fashion trend, diet trend, whatever kind of trend. Kong and water.
Here's the rub. I'm greatly concerned about addiction to screen time and social media. Here we are recording.
Yeah, exactly.
They are very useful tools. We live in an exciting time, but it's got an underbelly that's pretty scary.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, the gal I know who's got the children, very bright sons, and one of the things that has been really integral in their learning process has been using things like, apps on their phones and YouTube and stuff like that to learn, not to use to sit there and watch silly things or goof around on, but it can be really beneficial if you use it in the right way.
But you have to set limits on it. You
got to set limits on it.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for everything, and I've said to a lot of people, I definitely wouldn't be on Facebook if it weren't for the putting out a good message, because social media is a great way to reach out and get a hold of as many people as possible in one kind of swift stroke. And so, but otherwise, it can be a very toxic thing. I see people that just stuck to their phones, and I've been that way. That's been a problem for me. I'm on my phone a lot just by the nature of my work, but
it's a necessary tool, necessary evil, if you will. We have 2 grandsons that we're really concerned about because they were raised up with iPads, iPhones, and
yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, I know exactly when I stopped going outside and playing tag. It was when I got my computer back in '97, and that was when I started to stay in and started to go into Yahoo chat rooms and started downloading music and started doing all sorts of different things that were just kept me inside on a computer and just glued to the screen. And then eventually I got into video games and played Half-Life for 8 hours straight.
What it reminds me of, Stefan, is that years ago there was this research where they had rats. Rats could either solve up like a maze puzzle or have sex or eat. And they got so into the puzzle that they just wouldn't eat, wouldn't have sex, nothing. So when you look at computers and technology, there's always more. There's the next version of this video game. And you spend hours on hours getting good at it, and all of a sudden you have to start over again. Shows I've watched, articles I've watched about screen time, they are designed to addict you. The colors and so on. And one of my favorite former clients was a drug addict, alcoholic, and gambler. Had been at least 15 years clean and sober from all 3. And he said to me, when kids are raised with iPads and iPhones and Samsung phones and whatever, they walk into a casino, they are toast. They've been programmed. All the flashing lights. And
yeah, you're right. Anytime you look down at one of those games that people are playing, there's all sorts of colors. Bananas popping out everywhere. You have no idea what's going on with them, but it's very much like a casino. You're right. It sucks you in. I see people, playing them all the time where they're just they're so focused on it. And I'm thinking, why are you spending your time doing that? And in fact, I asked someone that just recently, not in that way, and she said, it's the only thing that gets me to stop thinking.
Yeah,
I was like,
Germans have a term, it's called Ablenkung, a disconnect. You stop your thinking. And several years ago, I went to a Mexican restaurant in Edmonds, and there were 6 girls sitting there. All of them are on their phones. They weren't even talking to each other. It's like, were you communicating by phone with each other, or why are you together? And when Pokemon hit, I knew nothing about it. What's going on? Everybody's turning into zombies overnight. There's all these people walking along like this.
Yeah, that was a popular spot for it too down there.
So I had no clue, and then that's what it is. Okay.
What's the funniest TV show you've ever seen? Can't be spiritual.
I really enjoyed Boston Legal, James Spader and William Shatner, about a legal firm in Boston.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Very poignant and really good storylines, but a lot of humor ran through it. Especially Shatner. He was perfect for the role. He was getting Alzheimer's, which he called mad cow disease. You never knew from one moment to the next whether the brilliant Denny Crane was going to show up or the whack job was going to show up.
Gotcha. I'll have to check it out.
And touching, too.
So, what is the most embarrassing childhood story?
Yeah, when we were kids and I lived in the suburbs of Philadelphia, a group of us got into a barn. There was like a living quarters above a barn, and you had to climb up and get into it. We thought that was really cool, and they had lime in a sack, and we were playing with it. And this is so soft and smooth.
How old?
I think I was 5th grade or so.
Okay, all right.
And we even threw it at each other, and we had no idea it was a caustic. And somehow nothing went wrong. As we were leaving, the farmer came after us, and there were 9 of us, and the little guy didn't make it over the fence. Everybody else did. So we decided we better go back and face the music, and we got back, and the cops were there, and we all got delivered home. by the cops to our parents. My parents were at church. The cops talked to my sister. So you need to tell your parents when they get home. Okay, fine. I talked her out of it, of course. But when my parents pulled up from church, one of the neighbor kids said, "How come Steve came home in a police car?" I was grounded for 2 weeks and had to write a composition on respect for other people's property.
Disciplinary actions your parents took?
Yeah, my dad, when it was really a major infraction, he would make you write about it. He'd read it, and then you had to talk to him about it. And I was pissed off because I was up in my room watching all my co-conspirators out playing, and I'm up grounded for 2 weeks. So I never forgot that one, but it taught me respect for people's property.
Yeah, for sure. What animal is most majestic?
I was just on a safari in South Africa over Christmas time. The first thing comes to mind is lions because they're so regal, and watching a pride of lions feasting on a giraffe, stunning experience.
Yeah.
But also the bull elephants. So you go to a zoo, and elephants in a zoo are small compared to what you see out in nature. We had one where we're going down the road, and we could see this monster coming around the bend. So we backed up and off to the side, and he came around, and I have a video of him checking us out as he walked by. We presented no threat. Everything was fine. But they were telling us about, there's videos of elephants sitting on the hoods of rental cars, tipping them over into the ditches and stuff. What they said is that we teach you how to be respectful. We didn't challenge the elephant. We backed up and off to the side, and he checked us out, but he didn't feel we were a threat. So, but we were taught, stay in the vehicle, don't stand up and change the shape of the vehicle, be quiet as you can. We were literally no more than 150 feet from the pride of lions that were feasting on a giraffe, and they really weren't all that interested in us.
Wow. So what was their plan if one of them comes charging at you? Were they equipped with weaponry? Or
the only time they had weapons, our people, because they're rangers and very conservation oriented, if we went on foot patrol, then they had two with high-powered rifles. When we were in the truck, they had no weapons. They just knew how to deal with the animals. We never had a bad moment, ever.
That terrified me. I want to do it at some point.
It was an experience everybody should have. So humbling to be so close to nature and sitting there in awe. There were a couple white rhinos, two mothers with babies, and they're in danger, and they're behind us. They went and did a mud bath, and we're sitting with our backed up against a tree, and we were no further from them than the very back end of your car.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just it was stunning. I'd say lions are the most majestic.
Lions are their kids. The last question would be, if you had the chance to say anything to everyone in the world, what would it be?
Well, it tap back into what we're talking about, and about how tough everything is, how traumatized people are in our culture with all the political infighting and opioid crisis and stuff, and it can be overwhelming. And so it's all about waking up, learning how to love yourself and love others. And I was raised a Catholic, and I went to Catholic schools, got my undergraduate degree at University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit school. So I had a minor in theology. And one of the lines from the Bible is, do unto others as you have them do unto you. Most of us don't like ourselves very well. So that's a recipe for disaster. But when you learn to love yourself, take care of yourself, people feel that, they respond to that. Life gets better. So I'd say wake up, be kind and loving to yourself, and pass that on to everybody else. You pay that forward, your kindness gets received. And just like if you're mean, you never know what they're going to do with it. Go back in their world with it. When you're kind, you also never know, but you're more likely to have had that ripple through their life.
Good, I like that. I think that's great. Wake up.
Yeah, wake up.
That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to wake up a little earlier these days. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan.